Ivan D. Abesa. With that, to formally commence our briefing, may we now call on the SILG for his opening statement.
Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. The public with the latest update on the investigations into the drowning incident involving 2 members of the Ateneo Blue Eagles men's basketball team. Following a thorough investigation conducted by the Philippine National Police, we are now prepared to present our findings and recommendations based on the evidence gathered. Ang layunin namin ay simple. Alamin ang katotohanan, pananagutin ang dapat managot, at tiyaking mananaig ang batas. We now go with the investigation. These are the recap of facts. On June 8, 2026, 2 players from the Ateneo men's basketball team died during a team building activity in the Pocolao, Aurora. The death was due to drowning during sea water training conducted at around 2:30 p.m. The sea water training was done during high tide when waves pulled the players further offshore. The said activity was organized and supervised by head coach Tab Boblin. This is the Blue Eagle Band of Brothers or BBOB. Ito ay lagi niyang sinasabi ng mga players na slogan ng kanilang samahan. Hindi lang sila basketball team, kundi Blue Eagle Band of Brothers o BBOB. Sunod. Ito ay sinabi ni Coach Tab Baldwin sa dati niyang interview, and I quote, "It was built around the fact that it's very difficult for young men who are at the height of their playing prowess, all of whom had egos that are fed by loving parents, adoring girlfriends, adoring fans, victories along the way, and these egos needed to be broken down to the whole," unquote. Sinabi niya rin, and I quote, "The best way to do that is to break the man and reduce him to a state where he can't do things on his own and requires the assistance of others in order to accomplish something," unquote. What we seek to do is stretch the limits of these players, take them near their limit, unquote. Ayan po ang pag-iisip at samahan ng BBOB. Sunod. Hazing. Ang Anti-Hazing Act of 2018 ay revised na po yan sa dating batas. Ang dati pong iniisip natin, ang hazing ay initiations lamang. Ngunit dito, ang team building at training ay nag-crossover papunta sa hazing. Hindi po to, ang hazing po, iniulit ko po, ang hazing po ay hindi initiations lamang. Ang dating concept natin ay nagpapaddle, ang dating concept natin ay hinihiya, ang dating concept natin ay pinapahirapan. Ayon sa batas na revised ng 2018, hazing refers to any act that results in physical or psychological suffering, harm, or injury inflicted on a recruit, neophyte, applicant, or member. That applies to the basketball team. As a prerequisite for admission or requirement or continuing membership in an organization. Kasama dito ang forced calisthenics at saka exposure to weather or other brutal treatment, forced physical activity which is likely to adversely affect the physical and psychological health of such recruit. Next. Elements of hazing as according to the amended law. Number 1, physical or psychological suffering. Number 2, as a prerequisite for admission or requirement for continuing membership. Number 3, the physical or psychological activities include, but not limited to, paddling, whipping.
Sir Secretary, we can go back to the elements. As the Secretary has mentioned, the crime of hazing under the new Anti-Hazing Act is expanded and covers not only the traditional way of initiation as we are aware of, but it covers also all other acts that inflict suffering and are done as a prerequisite or a requirement for admission or continuing membership into an organization. So we're also accustomed to fraternities conducting hazing, but under the law, any organization can be held responsible for this crime. We are going one by one for the three elements of hazing under the law. For the first element, there should be a physical or psychological suffering. This one is very clear as there is the presence of death of two individuals. This is a clear case of physical suffering under the law. The second element provides that there should be a prerequisite or requirement for continuing membership or admission to an organization. The evidence that was acquired and obtained by the CIDG would show that the supposed team building activity that was conducted in Aurora was precisely made to determine which members of the team will make it to the final list submitted by Coach Tab Baldwin to the UAAP board. This is signified by the fact that 20 members or 20 athletes were present during the activity, but that only 17 would eventually be in that final list submitted to the UAAP. Meaning there would be 3 members eliminated, and it appears from the evidence gathered by the CIDG that this activity was made precisely to screen or as a requirement for entrance into that list. The next quote would show, this is among the testimonies secured by the CIDG, is that the team building, according to the witness, assistant coach Louis Alas, was not a basketball-specific activity, but it was intended to determine the condition and mental toughness of the players. So these circumstances point to the fact that this supposed team building is really geared towards identifying which players will be fit for the final roster of UAAP players. Now for the third element, there should be a physical activity among the enumerated under the law. In this case, the CIDG found that the sea water-based activity constitutes hazing because there is an deliberate intent to cause suffering among the players. This is evident in the fact that Tab Baldwin, in his own testimony with the CIDG, admitted that they intentionally chose the dates June 7 to 12 to coincide with the low tide, meaning he is aware of the low tide and high tide information during the said dates. Although the admission is only for the low tide, as you can see from the photo on the left, any information about low tide necessarily includes information on high tide. And for the material date of June 8, to recap again, the next slide would show the timeline during the day of the death. So it is clear from the itinerary of the players that they were subjected to intense physical activity, starting at 4 a.m. when they were woken up by a siren and were made to run for 4 kilometers. And this was subsequently followed by intense physical games and punishment for losers in these games. The sea water training was conducted at around 2 to 2:30 p.m. and around 2:30 to 2:40 p.m. as strong waves pulled the players offshore. And after the head count, it was found that 2 of these players drowned and died. The next slide would show some excerpts from the testimonies of the players present, indicating that there was indeed physical suffering inflicted upon them, not only upon those who sadly passed away, but all those who were in attendance in that activity. In all, can we go back to the previous slide? In all these circumstances show that the elements of violation of anti-hazing law may be present, and that is why that is the recommendation of the CIDG